Welcome to Let's Talk with Dr. Robin. In this podcast, topics will be discussed that promote the daily management of life. While this information is meant to supplement your journey towards healthy emotional well-being, it is not intended to take the place of seeing a licensed mental health professional. I am Dr. Robin C. Wiley, a licensed clinical social worker with a private therapy practice in New Jersey. Thank you for joining today's conversation. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Let's Talk with Dr. Robin. So I came in today with, as I always do, I'm always prepared for our show. That's just my thing. So with what the topic is going to be and kind of my talking points, just so I make sure that I'm giving, you guys the best information and it's well thought out, what have you. However, we still have well thought out information, but we're going to take a little detour today. First, let me say, hey, Bryce, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm activated.
Okay,
so
you're activated.
Good morning.
Right. So that's
I'm
that's
activated,
it.
and usually when I'm activated, I'm just activated.
Okay. So Bryce is activated. So based on that, Bryce and I had a conversation before we got on air. And, I said, you know what, let's go with that. Let's go with that today, because our topic for today is dealing with external circumstances. So really that can encompass anything, which is, kind of where we're going to go today. Cause I'm gonna be honest, it's been a heavy week.
Yes.
It's been a heavy week this week. It's been a heavy, past few days. And it's possibly been, I don't know, can we say it's been like a heavy month, actually?
It has been.
Yeah, I mean, we're coming to the end of May, and May's been kind of tough.
It's like a close of a season. Right.
It is like a close of a season, and hopefully a close of a season that we don't ever want to see again. A season, it's like a season of heinous crime, of killing and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So, we can't, before we get into some other stuff, I just want to talk about, like I'm talking about, like this week, we had the school shooting in Texas. And so, very sad. I think, it's one of those things where we're all affected by this kind of stuff, with stuff that goes on. And I know I say that it's a heavy week because granted it has been, but it's also a heavy week when those of us who work in the field are therapists. It can be tough because then we are holding space for our clients. And when things happen like this, it's inevitable that, clients are going to talk about it. I was talking to one of my good friends and a colleague yesterday, and we were just talking about everything that's going on. Mm-hmm. He's also a therapist, a great therapist, I want to say. Mm-hmm. And he and I were just talking about like everything that's been happening in the media and all of these, and how it affects clients and how it affects us too, because, it's a shared experience. We're also watching the news and that type of thing. And so one of the things I put out earlier this week, just kind of like a Twitter post, was basically, we need to, just kind of talking about the tragedy. It's very difficult to make sense of these things. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's tough to make sense. You can't really make sense of it.
Absolutely.
We'll probably never know, the motive for this most recent heinous act, because we also have the issue that happened in Buffalo.
Right.
And, there's certainly a lot of attempts to give explanation for what happened. The news is dissecting things. And so that's why I always say to my clients, I say to people, we have to limit, and I practice this myself, we have to limit our news exposure.
Oh, big
Not
time.
taking away from the news. It's their job.
Yeah.
It's their job to report the stories, the headlines, and all those kinds of things that happen. But if you watch the news for about like 15 minutes, you've gotten everything you need to know.
No, absolutely.
But what happens is a lot of times we're watching like the looped news.
Right,
so the CNN, the MSNBC, those channels, and even your regular 6 o'clock news, or now I think it comes on like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and 6 o'clock or whatever. Mm-hmm. But what happens is the news continuously cycles, and it's the stories that are the headline stories are those stories that are like the crime stories, the bad stories. It's not that nice piece, that fluff piece, that nice, good story. That's like at the end of the news. You don't even hear about that, where somebody, saved a
cat from the tree.
Right. I was about to say the same thing. Right. Took a cat down from the tree or whatever. You don't hear about those stories, or something that's going on in the community. That stuff is kind of later.
Right.
So, we have to make sure we're trying to protect our mental well-being, and so sometimes, sort of limiting that overexposure, because we can receive some vicarious trauma because of that.
Right. True indeed.
So one of the things, I'm gonna get on my soapbox for just a second here.
Sure.
Because one of the things that kind of struck me was that they started talking about, mental health. Oh, we need to bring awareness to mental health. And in regards to this situation that happened in Texas, and not taking away from the fact that mental health may be a component with this.
Sure.
This young man who's now deceased may have had some mental health concerns or whatever, untreated, because they did say, I think they mentioned in the news, he didn't have any connection. There were no connections that he had with mental health agencies or whatever, as far as they know.
Mm-hmm.
However, it seems like mental health is being thrown around in the media as if it's the blanket cause of what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, we're going to just put mental health over this, and then we don't have to deal with some of the other things that have occurred. Like, for instance, how did he get access to a weapon?
Right.
And, and I get it, there are people who have guns or what have you, but that's not what this is about.
Right.
People who have guns and you legally have guns or whatever, that's your business.
Right.
And I'm not saying no guns or whatever, but I'm saying that in this country, we do need to have stronger gun control laws.
Yeah.
We need to limit access. Why does this young man, who I believe was 18 years old, with whatever was going on in his life, have access to a weapon and then uses that weapon to go in? So that is not, because to me, I don't want us to continue to perpetuate the stigma of acknowledging mental health by now associating it with mass shootings.
Well, I think, and I get what you're getting at, and I think it's actually wonderful, because, is and it's kind of making me think about like Ben Simmons, where it's like, I'm marrying. I'm telling you right now, I'm marrying things.
Because we're doing a little bit of a free flow today. So, anything is fair game today. So, okay, all right.
It's kind of like Ben Simmons a little bit.
I had to think about for a second who Ben Simmons was.
The basketball player, right?
I get it.
So he had all this terrible behavior. And then when in the 11th and a half hour, that's when he said mental health. And I believe it was derived or used as a way to kind of soften.
Okay. And
to soften the blow.
So I see.
So that's where I'm saying that, where I understand the point when you're saying like, we don't want to have it where mental health being associated with mass shootings, because then that kind of like softens the blow a little bit.
Right.
Because now all we're doing right now is thinking about, oh my gosh, like what this young boy has, this is what maybe drove him to this, and this is what maybe do this and this and that. And we
may never know that.
Right.
And also too, there's a difference between, there's mental health issues that sometimes are biological, that are more genetically, based in a sense, more of a chemical imbalance. And then there are mental health issues that are created by somebody's environment that they've grown up in.
Right.
And so we're not trying to minimize, because at the end of the day, his behavior is what we need to look at.
Period.
Right.
Because
what I'm saying is that there are people that have mental health issues that don't go in schools and shoot up.
Exactly. So you're right.
Yeah. Teachers and all those students.
You're separating the two, which is understandable, because he might have had some mental health concerns, and we can, all kind of like.
He still made a decision.
He made a decision.
Yeah, there was a decision.
Poor decision. And he needs to be held to that standard. I'm not sure.
Well, he's dead. So he won't be held. He will never be held to that.
But I mean, even when you're looking at it.
But we also may need to, and who knows what's going on, because they're also talking about, because there's other things too that are part of this. And, unfortunately, with watching the news, you see some of this stuff about, he did post things about some of his intentions. He did, post that he had shot his grandmother, things like that. So we will never know. And I'm not really I'm not here today to really talk about like, what would be the reason or whatever. What my thing is, and where my concern is that we just start using mental health as an umbrella. And we have to understand mental health encompasses a lot of stuff.
A whole lot.
So there are people that have mild mental health concerns. There are people that have more severe mental health concerns.
Right.
I just don't want there to be this idea that, if I'm dealing with some mental health issues, do I have the potential of doing X, Y, Z, of shooting up a school or whatever? Because that's not, we don't need to it's not in a box like that. It really isn't. And so my concern is that we need to look at this person's actions, look at what happened with him, and that this is not an everyday occurrence.
Right.
And that we need to just stop smearing it with mental health, because that's the easy way. That's the easy platform to be on, versus in this country.
Right, there's other
happening.
factors.
Right, there are so many other factors.
But don't use mental health as a way to justify it.
Let's not use mental health as the blanket.
As the blanket, and that's what Ben Simmons did.
And just some things to think about. And you're right, a lot of people will do that. People will use mental health, and we don't know. And I know his led up. I saw some stickers again in the media about that, with some of his actions and behaviors led up, and then he was
and that's not. And again, I want to be clear.
He started using his mental health as the reason.
Here go another way of marrying it. And let me be clear. I'm not trying to judge anybody.
Oh, yes. Perfect.
I'm not trying to judge nobody. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying that one could arrive at the conclusion that, okay, we in 11 and a half hour, then you tell me about mental health.
Right.
This young kid is going through different things. Okay, mental health is what made him do this.
Well, I think, this is the opinion of Dr. Robin. This is
right. It's all
we don't want to have the other conversation, because it's easier to talk about, it's mental health stuff.
Right.
So then we can just, wrap it up in a nice little mental health package and put it away, versus how did he get access to a weapon? There's other issues that are going on now with how the police responded.
Right.
There apparently was a door unlocked. There's like all these other pieces of the puzzle. So there's just some, and in the world that we live in, and in this country that we live in, where mass shootings have occurred, school shootings have occurred. So have we not learned anything? Are we not learning anything? Are we not taking the lesson in this?
Right.
Which the lesson is, we need to make some changes. Yeah. And changes need to be made on local levels
and
on state levels and on federal levels.
Right, absolutely.
And so that has to be done. I can't say what those changes need to necessarily be.
Right.
However, but there needs to be more conversation, and not just conversation, but also action.
I'll be honest.
You got to take some action about this.
What was his demographic? I don't know what his demographic was.
I do believe he was Latino.
Latino, okay.
So I do believe so, yeah. Which, so then there's, because of course,
there's all types of narratives.
There's all some discussions about race and that kind of stuff, because we know in Buffalo that seems to be like a racially motivated act and that type of. So these are all things. These are all different things. Even averse to when they come up with different conclusions to why somebody did that. Right.
Like, so that
we're always looking for, like, what was the motive?
What's the motive, right? You know what I'm saying?
But let me circle back. Let's circle back for a second, because, dealing with external circumstances. So these are things outside of our control, and so last week we talked about persevering through uncertain times.
Right.
And, in this kind of stuff, you got to think all the conversations that were had this week with kids, and so my thing is this, my heart goes out to
absolutely
educators.
Absolutely.
Too, because I think, well, one, here's the thing, when you sign up or you make that decision to become a teacher, and I have a lot of teachers and educators, you're in that field too.
That's right.
That, are near and dear to my heart. And so when you sign up to be a teacher, nowhere in your job description does it say that you need to have a willingness, or there needs to be an understanding that at some point in time, you may lose your life in the line of duty.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
That's not part of your job. That's not part of what it is. You're there to educate the future and to plant seeds in the lives of individuals that are children and maybe young adults on into their adulthood. That's the job. And so it's a scary time. So it's uncertain times, but there's work that needs to be done. There's things that need to be done. And so I want to go into more with this, because we're talking about external circumstances. So we're going to lighten it up just slightly.
Yeah. And I think, and I hate to go back to because I think when I see stuff like that, I just immediately, start to kind of go in my thoughts and kind of pray and ponder the people that lost their lives, the victims and stuff like that.
Right.
But I did read one part of something where it said that, he went over the top because he didn't graduate.
Oh, okay.
That's what I had read, that he didn't meet the requirements for graduation. So that's kind of where I'm like, you know what? Yeah, you're right about the educators and educators. I have to believe that they're in the field because you love children and doing the best you can. And and just,
you don't go into teaching because you just want your summers off.
Right. See, I don't know. Some people might though.
Well, but I'm saying, but
I'm hoping the majority does.
You don't stay in education.
Absolutely.
But with that being your basis of your reason, because nowadays teachers really don't have, like, school now it's like, oh, it's done June 30th and y'all starting back up in August.
That's right.
So you don't have that 3-month time frame. And teachers put in a lot of work
outside of the hours and everything.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, teachers put in a lot of work outside of their hours. They do a lot of extra. And in that community, was a rural community, small community. And so to me, those teachers, they were doing extra.
Right, absolutely.
Because in rural, because we talk a lot about the urban and the inner city communities, but rural communities had that same, some of those same concerns, but they manifest in a different way.
Yes.
So related to, food insecurity, housing insecurity, lack of resources in general, poverty, basically blanketing the community in a sense. And so
I think it's worse sometimes.
Yeah, it is a lot worse because a lot of times the resources are not there, or to travel to go get it.
Right. The access to it
is far away. Exactly. And transportation being a concern. So there's a lot there. And I say that to say, but when you are a police officer, I don't know what their job description completely says, but I think there is an understanding that when you are in that line of work, that you know that there's a possibility you could lose your life in the line of duty. So it's almost like having a mission. Like the mission is to protect and serve and that type of thing.
Well, that and then you already have like a natural guard. You're already in fight and flight at all times.
That's your job.
Right.
So when a teacher, we know part of this news story is the hesitant, because now other stuff is coming out. And like I said, I've had to just kind of turn it off, turn to some, I turn to my HGTV or my Bravo, whatever. I turn to my other channels because
Dr. Robin with the green thumb.
Well, I like to watch the house.
The house. Okay.
Yeah, the house shows.
Okay, not necessarily the garden.
No, not necessarily the garden. No. More of the house shows, the flipping the houses and all that kind of stuff. But as more of this story in Texas comes out, they're talking about how that the police did not act as would have normally been expected.
That's what I'm hearing.
And there was a waiting period, and that families were standing outside begging them to go inside. And apparently some of the law enforcement, they went in and got their kids, but so there was, there was also, there's a lot to this. And granted, this is what happens. Initially there were some things that were said because they're talking about the timelines and all of that matters in this situation. So now the issue is, could lives have been saved? And I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen with all that. But the story continues to unfold.
I think it's another thing,
and it's confusing for us.
Lend to a conversation of that. How come why are we more reactive than proactive? So, and I give you the example.
If I had the answer to that, we would be millionaires.
Right, absolutely.
That's a TED
The next day, there were all types of police officers and police presence around schools. When I was in Baltimore,
everywhere.
Everywhere. It didn't matter.
Right.
When I was in Baltimore City, we're here in my town, and we have police presence in the school and in the hallways and. So wonderful thing, right? I was in Baltimore. There was a precinct inside the school. Okay.
Already?
Yes.
Like that exists?
Built in. It's built in.
Okay.
The office. It's like that's together. That's where you come, you get processed, you get all that right there.
Everything's happening right
Everything's right here.
I thought this was a high school at least.
Yes.
Is it a high school?
Yes.
Okay, which is still a concern.
But you don't have to go down. Like, how you can process somebody, you got to go downtown for process. No, you can process right there.
Which is concerning, but
But it's to serve and protect, right? Because they have some circumstances.
Some stuff that,
But my thing is that
the need for that.
I think police should be in all schools.
And there's a debate about that, whether police should be in schools or whether they should be carrying weapons or what have you. But with everything that's going on, I mean, we had. And again, like you said, proactive versus reactive. And, we just operate in that state. Like people wait for something to happen.
And then we change.
For them to, and then we change something. And here's the thing, that will not bring back the lives that are lost. That won't eradicate the trauma.
Nothing.
It won't.
Right.
Because you've got a whole, how I look at that, when I saw that story, I'm saying, okay, you have these young people, these young children who did not ask to be here, who have lost their lives. You have these 2 women who dedicated their lives to teaching, who have lost their lives.
That's right.
Okay. But you also have the complex trauma that now has been created by this event that will last for years to come within those individuals.
All about everybody that was in that
who went to that school, right, exactly. The families of those kids, people trying to explain to their children, people who lived in neighboring town. You just never know how that's going to manifest with everybody. And so to me, that's the stuff that we don't think about.
Right.
You know, when people are talking about like, how do we deal with this? And we've had enough, you know, I mean, me too. We've had enough of this. We've had enough of the killing, shooting, whatever. But we're not thinking about like this lingers on.
Right.
So way after this story is no longer in the media.
Still lives are still being affected.
Affected.
And that's the thing. Yeah. So that's even more the reason why to be more proactive. But now you start getting into there's other reasons, right? So budgeting or money cuts or access to certain things. And those are the things that unfortunately, so when you spoke and you talked about getting involved on a local level and then a state level and then a federal level, you're absolutely right, because that's the only way that it could bring light to these type of situations so that we can be proactive than more than reactive. And it's easy to do. I mean, when you know it's going to rain. Yeah,
but what happens is the money, what happens is the funding. So funding typically rarely goes into proactive programs. They go into reactive programs because just like now, and I saw somebody had posted, I'm not sure if it was on Instagram or on Twitter. And they posted that apparently now there's monies available because I think was it Uvalde? I'm always saying her name wrong, but for the community in Texas. Okay. So there's monies now available to groups to provide counseling and that type of stuff. When the reality is they probably needed resources and stuff to begin with. So now resources will pour into that community, but it's reactive. It's because of this. Because before this, we never heard of that town.
Right.
We weren't thinking about those people.
Yeah.
Right. Nobody was. Right. Exactly.
Right. So and it's not to say that
concern. That is the concern. But that is how we operate. We function like that. We function. I mean, we probably function like that actually in our own individual lives. Like a lot of times we're not thinking about, well, how can I be proactive to prevent something from happening? We typically do operate in a reactive state.
Yeah, but that's dependent on what we find important. So because like I was gonna say, is that hey, listen, if you know it's gonna rain, you ain't wearing them white sneakers, and you gonna make sure you got an umbrella. You gonna make sure you got. I'm just saying.
Some people not checking the weather.
Okay, but there's a vast majority that.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
You have people that the way they function in life.
Sure.
They're not checking so if you're not checking, then you don't know.
So
what could possibly be that unpredicted outcome, and so you're not prepared. So
really checking, I can kind of marry that with being in tune.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying, and being.
And self-awareness.
That's it. I like the
what's going on.
Awareness.
Right.
Yes.
So it's the same thing. We talked about this in here before on the show before about this idea of how we will expect people to behave or to do things based on what they should do, not what they do.
Right. So it's having an expectation.
So that's a way of not having awareness too.
Right.
So I'm preparing myself for what you should do because of whatever role you hold in my life, because of whatever person you are. Whatever. Right. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that that's not okay in some circumstances. Like, as in my profession, and as a someone who has a foundation, my foundation of my work is in social work. Right. I believe in the inherent good in people. Right. So I believe that people are good at their heart, but I do know that there are things, because I'm realistic, there are things that impact someone's ability to be good all the time, to see the good in themselves, or to even think that there is value in being good. Right. There are a lot of factors that can impede that. So I have to be realistic. So, but oftentimes we're looking at people based on what we think they should do. And so a lot of times we're looking at circumstances based on, well, this should be like this. Like, oh, it's sunny outside right now. Right. So if it's sunny outside, then it's going to be a good day. Right. So then we don't think about how to be prepared for when it's no longer sunny.
Right. We're not mindful.
Yeah. We're not mindful. It's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that play into that. So let's, this is good because we're going to get into some ways to cope in a couple seconds. I'm going to go through some ideas because, like I said, heavy week. And, when we're dealing with external circumstances, things that are beyond our control, which believe it or not, most things are. So let's be honest about that. Most things, and we just did a show on the, letting go of that need for control.
That's right.
Most things are beyond our control. Most things are, and we have to be aware of how we allow the external to impact us internally.
Right.
And try to minimize that, because a lot of times those external things are things we need to just keep on moving. If we can move past it, so even with this situation, things that are happening in the news, we may think, okay, it doesn't really affect me, but it does affect us.
Right.
Because we're aware of it.
Right.
And external circumstances, this is something we were talking about before the show, was this idea of judgment. So I want to get into that because I thought that was a good topic for us to get into. And about this idea of, and I think, I'll be honest, I think we all
judge.
We all judge. Everybody judges. The most non-judgmental person judges. And a lot of times we judge really subconsciously. So we look at somebody, we see them, we're making judgment.
Right.
The judgment doesn't have to be bad. The judgment could be good.
Be very positive.
But a lot of times judgment can be inaccurate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so I think we want to get into, do you want to talk about like kind of an overall example of that, of how judgment can play? Like if somebody is, well, okay, I'm gonna let you do it.
Yeah, I think, well, I'll just say that judgment comes from not only, I think judgment comes from your own experiences, right? And based upon what you've been shaped and how you've been shaped. So if I see things a certain way and, based upon my experiences, then I, like, for instance, if I think that, everybody, in fact, this is real for me. When people cook my hamburger, they cook it real quick and fast. So on the outside is done, but the inside is raw as hell.
And that's not how my language. That's not how you're supposed to eat your burger.
No, it's not.
People would do it like that, but
people
I was
like it like that.
Ground beef.
That's ground raw. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So, so now when I'm around somebody, they say, "Oh, you want a burger?" And this kid was making a burger for me on. We had a barbecue to school on Thursday, and he was making it, and he did it real quick. Now I was only out there about 3 minutes, 4 minutes. So, no, Bryce, you done? You done? No. I ain't done yet. No. Squeeze that thing a little more. Squeeze it up more.
Yeah, because that's how you squeeze it. You see that the red coming up out of there. It's not done.
But I'm already have a judgment that.
Okay, right. So you're already right. So you're already cautious.
I'm already cautious, and I already have that judgment. Nah, you trying to give me a raw burger. So I have to initiate myself onto the situation, right? So that's my experience.
Right, exactly.
That's shaping my view.
Right, exactly.
And that's what a judgment is, right? Is that fair to say somewhat?
I think that's an influence of judgment, right? Okay. I think that can certainly be an influence of how we think things should be a lot of times.
Right.
Past experiences.
Right. I'll give you another example. I used to sit, I used to go to church, and I still go to church most of the time, online sometimes.
No judgment there. Look,
yeah, but it's all good. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, look, that's your business.
And didn't at the time didn't understand that my relationship with God was more than just my relationship with the church. It was a relationship that I got to have with Him, right? So for a long time, I used to sit in the back, and I might have jogging pants on, nothing, whatever. But you know what? I felt like I was judged because it's like, oh, okay, because I'm, and I think people still judge me, not just in church, but anywhere I go, where I'm very relaxed. I kind of have that my father's syndrome. Okay, my father, he was a high earner, heavy worker, do his thing, but on the weekends, whatever, he'd be wearing that same old little jogging pants.
I think that's every.
It might be
every father.
It might be.
They had that outfit. They had that one. They had that outfit.
It's an outfit. You know what I'm saying?
Outfit.
It's the weekend outfit. You know what I'm saying? But people judge that and say, oh, you know what I'm saying? He's not.
They don't know
because they don't know.
Right. And that's unfortunately where judgment gets us into trouble, because we don't know. So we don't know, and a lot of times we don't inquire. We don't try to get to know, and so therefore, because we don't try to get to know, then we're just passing judgment on the person and their situation, maybe their intentions, a whole thing. And so we got to be careful, because when we judge somebody, oftentimes we're projecting our stuff onto them. And that can be guided, like you said, by your experience.
Say that one more time, sorry.
So a lot of times, wait a minute, hold on. Because I'm off script here.
I know.
We go in a different direction.
I know. When I hear the jewels, I got to hear it one more time.
So I'm saying, oftentimes projection, Well, judgment is about our projection, because in that projection, we're projecting, our issues onto other people. So what happens is, and a lot of times it could be that somebody does something that's triggering for us. It triggers us. So we've had a past experience that was a negative experience. So therefore, when we see this person in front of us doing a similar thing, or what we feel is a similar thing, we then project the reaction onto them.
That is correct.
And so oftentimes that's unfair. And we do that a lot in our relationships with people.
Big time.
We do that. We're like, oh, you doing this, and I had this experience with such and such.
You going to do the same. You the same way.
And you the same way.
Same way.
Yeah. So then we just make a general statement, and it's not fair to the person. And we've all done it. We all do it. Right. We all do, just like we all judge.
We all do it.
The thing is to have an awareness of it, to have an awareness. And also too, if you feel like you are being judged, because this is where our conversation was going about, do you have that conversation with the person to say, look, I feel like you're judging me. I feel like it's unfair, blah, 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 having that conversation, because you got to think about whenever you try to and I say it's confrontation, but confrontation is not always bad. And confrontation doesn't always have to be what I like to say, anger infused.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be about anger. Sure. You can have just a regular conversation, but you're still confronting the person on what you feel like they have judged you on, or what they said to you.
Right.
However, you got to think about, and I always say this is probably another whole show, but about, do you want to expend that energy?
To explain it.
Right. To have that conversation with them. Is it worth it?
Right.
So that's what you have to hold. Yeah. So that's what you got to look at. A couple of things: the significance of the relationship.
That's what I was looking at. Yeah.
Not always, and sometimes it can be about if the person can hear it or not.
Right.
But sometimes I do believe you need to say something to somebody, not for them, but more for yourself. Right. Because many of us, and this is a Dr. Robin trait right here. And I've had to learn, and I'm still learning, because, even as, I'm a therapist, but I'm a person first. Sure. So I'm still learning that, we don't always have to say everything that's on our mind.
True indeed.
You know what I mean? Or sometimes we need to think about it for a minute and then come back to the table and then have the conversation. Right. Because oftentimes our feelings. That's another
show too, though.
That is another show. You need to write that down while I'm talking. You jot that down. Show. Right. Because that communication that we want to have with the person, sometimes, our feelings are involved. So we have to think, you have our thoughts, what's happened, we have what has triggered us, we have our thoughts about it, and then that causes our feelings to stir up. Those feelings may be based on the irrational thought. Right, okay. Right. So what ends up happening is then our reaction or the conversation we're going to have with them is also based on the irrational feelings, based on the irrational thought. So we're starting out with something that's not really factually based. Right. And then we have a reaction that's based on all of that. Right. So that's why I'm saying, like, you want to take a minute sometimes, think about it, get your thoughts together, and also think about, like, do you want to expend that energy? Do you want to really put that energy into this conversation with the person? Because if that relationship is not significant, then you may not want to do it. You know what I mean? True. But some relationships that we have,
it's significant enough to want to have
that you're like, look, we need to work through this because, and when I say significant, because people will lump everybody into significant.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna say this, and it may seem a little controversial, but I'm still gonna say it because that's what we do when Let's Talk with Dr. Robin. We have conversations that may not always be comfortable.
Absolutely.
That significant relationship may not be significant. And that person that you're referring to could actually be a family member.
Right. Absolutely.
So I'm going to put that out there.
No, sure.
Because what we need to stop doing is we need to stop giving family passes.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? That's not my original concept.
Right.
But this family pass.
Right.
This idea of, that's my family.
Can't say nothing.
That's my blood.
Right.
I can't I'm going to just let them keep doing stuff or whatever, what have you. Yeah. Anybody out there that's a therapist?
Yeah.
Will probably may not tell you, but we know in the back room, we'll all agree.
Right.
Most people, when people come into therapy and they start talking about their trauma and they start talking about things that have occurred in their life, things that have impacted them in a negative way, whatever that may be, they're not talking about strangers on the street.
No, they're talking about family.
Oftentimes they are talking about people who were directly related to them, connected to them in their family.
Yep.
When they talk about the hurt that they have had, when they're sitting and crying and all that other kind of stuff and trying to overcome the manifestation of the trauma that happened to them in their earlier years, they are talking about family.
Yep. Yeah. No, you're right.
So we need to, and sometimes, we have to redefine, because we always, in my field, we always ask people, who do you consider family?
Right.
Because oftentimes who people consider family are people that are not blood related.
Right.
There are people that have shown them through their actions that I'm there for you unconditionally.
And that is exactly, see, I'm going to marry something again.
All right.
That, it brings me to this, at least what my conclusion that I have in my head. My mother, rest in peace, she taught me a lot of things. But one of the things, I should love her sayings, right? And one of the sayings that she taught me was, believe half of what you hear, but all of what you see.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That's a good old saying.
See.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So,
people talk a lot. But you got to look at people's actions. And so it goes hand in hand with actions speak louder than words.
Bottom line.
And I think as we evolve as individuals, you know what I mean? And we're constantly, this is a journey. Yeah. So as we evolve as individuals, we start looking at those relationships that we have with everybody, friendships, family relationships, interpersonal, intimate relationships, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
We start looking at those and we start assessing, who is contributing to and I always talk about wellness, whether it's mental wellness, whatever the wellness is, because remember, wellness is also an umbrella with a lot of things under it, but who's contributing, who's making deposits,
and withdrawals,
who's taking withdrawals.
Yep.
And granted, it's always going to be some
balance, a healthy balance.
But who's doing more of the withdrawing than they are of depositing?
Right.
And so we need to think about that,
and be and also being mindful of people that articulate that they're making deposits when really they're just cashing in on a lot of withdrawals.
Right. Yeah. Because if you got to talk about the deposits,
you know what I'm saying? That you
probably aren't making a lot of deposits.
Well, it just, that's why I go back to that.
Deposits are different, because they can be
different in different ways.
We're not talking about financial. This is not about, because people make deposits into us in different ways.
In so many different ways.
Sometimes somebody, just like the conversation we had before here, that conversation, we were depositing into each other.
Sure.
We were having a conversation. You were giving me some ideas about some different things.
Right.
I was talking to you about some stuff. So we were making some deposits while we were making a withdrawal. Because the withdrawal is you giving me information.
That's about line.
So, right. So that's taking something from you, but it's not something that can't be replenished.
Absolutely.
And I think, we have to think about that. So to me, it's like, this external circumstances, things are going to happen. They're going to be there. Things are going to happen beyond our control. So I want us to wrap up.
Okay.
Because talking about energy, because energy, that's the thing. We got to talk about energy, but we'll talk about that more on another day. But that idea of how you spend your energy and expend, expend and spend, same thing, but how you expend that energy, and is it worth it when you're looking at what you confront, what you're going to deal with, how you address an external circumstance.
Right.
So I want to talk about some ways to cope with external circumstances, whether it is, what we talk about with this being a heavy week, different things that have occurred within your week for you as an individual. So a couple things. Well, I think I got about like 8 or 9 things here, but okay, I'm gonna go through them pretty quick because they're pretty self-explanatory, but acknowledge the feelings that you have. Don't minimize your feelings. You know what I mean? A lot of times, we're stuffing feelings. We're like, oh, I don't have time to feel. I don't have time to cry.
Right.
You know what I mean? You don't need to be a martyr in this situation. Sometimes we do need to have that
human experience.
Yeah, that human experience. And we need to, show those feelings, even if it's behind closed doors. That's okay.
Right.
But you want to acknowledge your feelings, because if you don't do that, then what happens is they're going to manifest themselves somewhere anyway.
Absolutely.
Right. So it's like if you got an issue with somebody,
right.
This goes back to what you were talking about with the judgment. If somebody has judged you, and or so-called done you wrong.
Right.
They've done you wrong. And then you don't say anything, and you just kind of like minimize your feelings about it, because not saying anything may be that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you still have to interact with that person. It's going to come through with how you interact with them.
Right.
So the next thing is limit exposure to the news. Don't get caught up in that loop. That's what I was talking about with the news story. That's important. Practice gratitude in times where there are things happening that we don't understand, that we can't make sense of. We just have to be thankful for being here, thankful for what we do have, thankful for what is, what is happening versus what's not happening.
Right.
And gratitude, and it's not to say that, we are grateful for that something didn't happen to us, so to speak. Right. But it's the idea that, okay, you know what? Hopefully that community will come together in Texas. Hopefully some things will change. I'm throwing a lot of hope out there.
Right.
But it's unfortunate that circumstances like this then prompt us or then pivot people to say, oh, we need to do something different. The next one is practice self-care, engage in what contributes to your wellness. Okay. Find an outlet to express your feelings, whether that is maybe journaling. Some people need to write, some people draw, some people are exercising. I know for me, I got outside, I just needed to breathe some fresh air, this week.
Take a walk.
Yeah, take a walk or something like that.
Take your mind.
Or even if that's like going to like a kickboxing class or something like that, getting it out.
Right.
Lean on your support system, knowing who your support system are. We are going to do a show soon about creating a support system, what that needs to look like. But, sometimes you need to lean on people. You need to have some conversations. And if you can't lean on your support system, then they're not a support system.
No, you got to find,
Then you need to find some new people. Right. I mean, I'm not saying everybody, but there should be somebody that you can pick. You should always have somebody you can pick up the phone and say, hey, look, I'm going through X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, can I
talk to you for a second?
Talk for a second.
Right. Hopefully you got more than one person.
Yeah.
But if you don't have anybody, or if the person that you think you can do that to is not available, you need to find somebody.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Also, seek additional professional support if needed. So like sometimes, things happen and we feel like, look, I need to talk to somebody. Or the same situations keep occurring. I need to talk to somebody. So that means, yes, talking to a counselor or therapist, and I say professional.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we're not going to say it because I know exactly what you're about to say, but we're not going to say it. So, okay. Somebody who can be objective and can handle your whatever you need to put out there.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And another thing is remember what's not in your control. So remember that we do not have control over a lot of the things that happen externally of us. So sometimes we do have to, like I talked about last week, ride that wave. But what we have to remember is what we can control is us. So we can only choose how we respond to what's happening.
Right.
That's it. That's where the choices are. That's where, you know what I mean?
Right.
And no response sometimes is a response.
Oh, no response is absolutely.
And can be a very good response sometimes.
That's oftentimes my go-to.
Okay. So again, be mindful of how we allow external circumstances to impact us internally and to what extent.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I hope you've enjoyed today's show. We've enjoyed certainly being here with you guys and bringing this information to you. Please continue to like, share, and subscribe the YouTube channel. Let's Talk with Dr. Robin. We're also on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. And until next time, this is Dr. Robin. Be well, be great, be you.